Bom dia, meus amigos. Welcome to Tudo Tuga, the Everything Portuguese Soccer podcast. I'm Mitch Freire. Joining me today remotely is Christian Freire. Christian is a little bit under the weather. I'm not sure if it's because he's still recovering from the Convocados yesterday and the fact that there were no Sporting players in the Convocatória. We're going to jump into that and get through to that. But before we jump into Christian, let's just jump right into the meat and potatoes, guys. Yesterday was the big day. Fernando Santos naming his 26-man roster for the upcoming Mundial in Qatar. And it was full of a little bit of controversy, a little bit of surprises, of course. We expected that. It was never going to just be an easy 26-man roster to name out of the 55 players that we covered last week. There was obviously a lot of guys that we knew were going to be big contenders to be on the list. So before we get into it, let's go right to Tio Fernando and review the convocados.
Então, Diogo Costa, José Sá, Rui Patrício, Diogo Dalot, João Cancelo, António Silva, Danilo Pereira, Pepe, Rubem Dias, Nuno Mendes e Rafael Guerreiro. João Palhinha, Rubem Neves, Bernardo Silva, Bruno Fernandes, João Mário, Mateus Nunes, Otávio Monteiro, Vitinha, William Carvalho, André Silva, Cristiano Ronaldo, Gonçalo Ramos, João Félix, Rafael Leão e Ricardo Horta. São estes os 26 convocados.
And there you have it. There are the 26 convocados for the 2022 FIFA World Cup in Qatar. A lot to get into here, a lot to talk about. But first and foremost, I want to get Christian to jump in here and give his 2 cents. Just your initial thoughts, buddy. I know you're under the weather, but give us your thoughts on Tio Fernando's calls there.
What's going on, guys? Sorry I couldn't be in there today. Definitely feel like shit. But
you look like shit too.
Fernando Santos definitely didn't help me feel like this, or feel any better, I should say. To be honest, though, there's this 26-man roster. The later picks, they're not really going to play that much anyway. You're going to have your base 11 that are going to play no matter what. But definitely, I'm definitely a little upset. No Sporting players, but I'm sure we'll get into that a little bit more.
So to that point, Chris, let's just kind of run through it. Let's go starting with os guarda-redes, the keepers, Diogo Costa, José Sá, and Rui Patrício. Any surprises there for you?
No surprises. I think personally, I don't know about you, Mitch, but I think Diogo Costa is going to be the guy now, man.
Yeah, I think so too. There was a big talk about whether or not Anthony Lopes, got a call over potentially José Sá. Obviously, we all know Wolves fighting for their lives in relegation zone. By the way, bom dia, Daninhas. Thanks for tuning in, buddy. So, yeah, we talked a little bit about potentially Anthony Lopes getting a call up over José Sá. I mean, at the end of the day, I think we're well serviced with José Sá, even though we all know Wolves, the tough go they've had. I mean, the guy's still out there saving penalties. I mean, he's still a great shot stopper. To me, still one of the best Portuguese keepers out there. So I really don't think there was a big surprise there.
100%. Yeah.
So no issues with the guarda-redes. Defesas, Diogo Dalot, João Cancelo, Danilo, Pep. We should talk about Pep. There was a question. Fernando Santos was questioned in the Conferência de Imprensa after he named the squad about Pep and whether or not he was going to be fit. We know he has not played for almost 2 months. It's been a while since Pep has actually played. We still don't quite know the extent of his injury. We know it's a knee injury. We don't really know much about it. It's been pretty tight-lipped in the Porto camp with regards to his injury. Very vague. We don't really know a lot of details. All Fernando Santos said was there's a doctor on the Porto side that he asked, is he available for call-up? And the answer was yes. So, I I guess the big question is going to be, he's there. Is he going to be fit to play? Is I guess the big question.
I mean, nobody knows 100%, but I mean, I still do agree with calling him up.
Yeah.
He's a staple to our national team, man, even at his age. Believe it or not, I'm not saying he's better than Diaz. Of course, he's not better than Diaz, but put our Portugal shirt on, and he's been our best defenseman, turn in every tournament so far. Maybe besides that stupid Germany game that he made that stupid mistake. But I think he's so important to this national team that he's got to be there. He's definitely a leader, and we'll be better with him in the lineup.
Yeah, so the last time he played was October 4th against Leverkusen in the Champions League. That was the last game Pep has played. So, he's going to be almost 2 months without action. So it's going to be interesting to see whether Fernando Santos actually plays him come World Cup, or I guess maybe it's gonna take him getting to the estádio and him actually starting to kick the ball around in training to see for Fernando Santos to really make a proper evaluation as to whether or not he's going to be healthy to play.
100%. But you know what? I do hope he plays. I think we're better with him in the lineup. 100%.
Absolutely. So running down the list, Ruben Dias, obviously no surprises there. Nuno Mendes, Rafael Guerreiro. We talked a little bit about whether or not Mario Rui could get a call. Mario Rui, left back for Napoli. Napoli's in first place right now in the Serie A. Napoli also first place in their Champions League group, having a great year. And Mario Rui has been a staple in that starting 11. He was actually called up the last convocatoria. He played very well. He started. So there was a big question as to whether Mario Rui would get the call up. Are you surprised he didn't and he went with Mendes and Guerreiro here?
Not too surprised. Like, he hasn't, although he is playing really good. Nobody can deny that. And on top of that, he put in a good performance with the Portugal shirt on. We're just so set up on left backs, man. Guerreiro and Mendes are just different. They're different beasts. And then not to mention Cancelo can go left back. We talked about lots. So no need for 4 left backs, in my opinion.
For sure. So no issues there. And of course, the big novidade in the defesas, António Silva. Tony, give me your thoughts.
So I hope people don't misunderstand me. And I mean this clubismo aside and all that stuff. Like, I do think he's the future. This is nothing against him. This is all in Fernando Santos. My only issue is that he is in good form. He is scoring big goals, but he's played 10 games for the senior squad. At the same time, Gonçalo Inácio already won a Super Cup, a league, and 2 Taças da Liga. Never played 1 minute. Again, this is not Antonio Silva's fault. Does he deserve to be there? Probably he does. But at the same time, it's sort of a slap in the face to Inácio, in my opinion. I don't know what you think, Mitch.
So, again, I'm wearing my Portugal jersey today, so Benfica hat off. I agree with you. As excited as I am for António Silva, I think it's got to be an unbelievable feeling to be 19 years old. He just turned 19. Having played a few games, you go from literally a Benfica B player. Morato gets injured for Benfica. He has the opportunity to step in at center back with Otamendi. And I mean, the kid has just played lights out. He's surpassed everyone's expectations. And of course, the stars really all aligned for António Silva, because it wasn't just Morato that was injured. Lucas Verissimo was injured. The new signing, João Vitor, also injured. So it was literally 3 center backs out at Benfica. There was no other options. Rogério had to go with a kid. António Silva stepped in, and the kid, he showed up and game in and game out and game in and game out. He started with these big performances, and I think where he really, really opened people's eyes was in the Champions League, when we were playing guys like Neymar and Messi at PSG, and António Silva played extremely well. He showed a maturity way, way, way beyond his youth. And I think that's when he really started to raise some eyebrows and raise some eyes, and people started saying this kid could be the real deal. To your point, Christian, I still think it was a mistake calling him. And I'll tell you why. The only reason I think it was a mistake is for a couple reasons, actually. Number one, he's still young. He's still very, very young. And at a center back role, you need two center backs at all times. Okay. We've got Ruben Dias, who is healthy. We've got Danilo, who's a makeshift center back. You've got Antonio Silva. At the end of the day, we don't know if Pep is going to be fit to play. Pep is a big question mark. There's a big question mark over Pep's state right now. So put him aside. Then you've got Ruben Dias and Danilo. Let's say, Pep is just still not fit to play. You've got two things you got to contend with. You got yellow cards, potential suspensions, or injuries that could happen. So the likelihood of Antonio Silva playing in this World Cup is actually quite high.
Yeah.
And to me, a center back role is a role that's extremely important to a squad because you have to be experienced. You have to know how to play. It's not just you get the ball, you can do some fancy shit. No. There's a lot more to it. There's a lot of positional marking that you have to know how. You have to have a high football IQ, and that's why center backs, especially at World Cup, are typically older guys because they're more experienced guys. You don't see a whole lot of young 18, 19-year-old center backs starting for a big team like Portugal in a World Cup. It usually just doesn't happen. It's got to take a very special. Even Ruben Dias, as good as he was when he came into the Seleção in 2018, I don't even think he played a game.
Yeah,
this is his first major tournament. He didn't even play a game. So I think it was risky. It's a very risky call. If we had nobody else to call in vez do Antonio Silva, I could maybe see it. But when you got a guy like Gonçalo Inácio, who could very, very easily slot in. You've got José Fonte, who, yes, he's older, but if you're looking for a more secure, safe call, could be José Fonte.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, 100%.
What's that? So we got a comment here, Sumo85. Before the Euro 2016, Renato Sanches had only played one friendly for the national team at the age of 18, and we all saw how it ended. Very true, and I'm not saying that that's not possible, but different positions. Renato Sanches is coming off the bench into the midfield. You got a lot more libertad and a lot less margin for error when you're coming into the midfield, or coming in as a forward, or coming in as an extreme, a winger. There's a lot less margin for error. When you're at center back, there is zero margin for error. You cannot make a mistake. And Antonio Silva has showed that he is capable of making some of those stupid mistakes. He showed some of that, and that's just falta de experiencia. So my concern is, as excited as I am for Antonio Silva, Benfica had off. I think it's a bad call by Fernando Sanches. I really do. I think it's not a safe call. And I think if we need a center back to step in, I'm not saying Antonio Silva can't do the job or won't do the job, but it's a risk. There's a big risk there because of his age. And I just don't know that it was worth the risk. It's worth the risk having taken him when we have very viable options in someone like a Gonçalo Inácio, especially Gonçalo Inácio, in my opinion. He was the guy that should have been called.
So this is my issue, though. And again, I know Antonio Silva is new to the picture here. But in my opinion, this is where Fernando Santos had to have called these guys up before the World Cup for those friendly games. Never played for the national team, and then now the first few games you're going to play are in the World Cup. This is why me and you massage this subject so often, is because before the World Cup is when you make these calls and these picks, because now he goes in there, he can play against quote unquote weaker sides, and develop and get experience, not just get thrown into the biggest world stage where all eyes are on you. You know what I mean?
Well, I mean, to your point, Christian, like Gonçalo Inácio hasn't been called up to the Seleção since March.
Yeah.
And he didn't even play. He's been available to be called up. You know, the last call up, he ended up calling Thiago Diallo from Lille.
Yeah.
And I mean, he didn't even play him. He had a chance to play him. Instead, he put João Palhinha at center back because he forgot Diallo was on the bench. So I don't know. Maybe he forgot Inácio was available for a fucking call up. I don't know.
Yeah.
You know, I have a problem with it because I think at center back, man, it is very, very, and let's be real. Let's be realistic, man. Not every kid is going to be able to step onto the world stage at 19 years old. At center back, you've got every eyeball in the world on you. That is a big, big responsibility for a 19-year-old kid. If he has to step in, the pressure, it's not just club level now. You're talking international on the biggest tournament in the world. I'm not saying he can't do it. I'm just saying it's risky. And I don't know that we should have taken that risk.
So Chubby Choda's back.
It is a lot of pressure. And Danilo makes a good point here. Says Inácio should have already played at least 5 to 6 games next to Dias. That is 100% the point I'm trying to make. Gonçalo Inácio should have been integrated into the Seleção already 2 years ago. At least after the last Euro, Fernando Santos should have been looking at an aging back line with Pep and Font and should have started bringing in younger players to integrate them into that team, especially at the center back role. Gonçalo Inácio being the number one pick. He's been touted as the biggest kind of prospect in Portuguese football in the last little bit, especially in terms of center backs. Definitely the best center back we've been able to produce since Ruben Dias. I mean, this kid is it's a shoo-in. So anyway, I don't want to get too caught up on this. We'll talk a little bit more about potentially why Gonçalo Inácio wasn't called. But let's move forward, Christian, into the meio camp. Médios were João Palhinha, no surprise there, Ruben Neves, Bernardo Silva, Bruno Fernandes, João Mário. We talked about whether or not João Mário was going to make it. Do you agree with João Mário being called, Christian?
See, for me, that's not like a big no. I get it. He's won the Euro with Fernando Santos. He's been part of the national team for a long time, and he's in good form. So, I mean,
the best form of his life.
Yeah, 100%. But
even he's exceeded within the first 10 games of the season. He's exceeded his best form in his sporting days.
Yeah, but are you talking about goals? Talking about
goals, assists, everything.
I mean, maybe assists, but he's the main penalty shot taker for Benfica. So a lot of his goals are penalty shots. But yeah, he's in good form, and I do get that he's there just because of he's been there, done that, won the Euro with Portugal. So I get it.
Good. I'm glad we agree. Because I know your feelings. I know your personal feelings about João Mário.
Not today, man. All right. It's always make me feel worse, sir.
Mateus Nunes, Otávio Monteiro from Porto, Vitinha, e William Carvalho. The big ausência here, guys, João Moutinho was one of the big ausências. João Moutinho's been a staple in the Seleção for many, 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 many years. One of the most capped players for our Seleção. João Moutinho not making the call. And the big one, in my opinion, the biggest one, Renato Sanches. Christian, your thoughts?
I mean, I'd like to see Renato there just because he gives a lot for the national team historically. But at the same time, I do get why he's not being called up. He hasn't really been playing. But
does it matter?
Man, this is the thing. This is where I think Fernando Santos contradicted himself because he called Pep. He hasn't been really playing, and he's questionable. But he didn't call Renato. Again, I would have called Renato. And you know what? I mean, I'm about to say something that's not the sexiest thing, but like even Wolves players, I don't know if I would have called many Wolves players this year. Maybe besides like a Neves and stuff, but when you're like second last or third last in the league, you know what I mean? I would as much as I love Mateus Nunes, as much as I think he's an amazing player and he does have a future, I would have almost, and I know this is gonna shock you a little bit, but I would have almost brought Renato over Mateus Nunes at this point.
150%. 150% I would have taken Renato Sanches over Mateus Nunes.
Yeah.
Not only because I just think Renato Sanches is a better player. He's a proven player. Renato Sanches is, and we've talked about this, for whatever reason, regardless of the form that Renato Sanches is in, he almost reminds me of a Manish. You remember Manish?
Oh yeah.
Manish, club level, was kind of like, he was okay. You know, he played for Porto. Yeah, he was a good player for Porto. Played for Benfica. Didn't ever really do anything big for Benfica. I think he went to Chelsea. He didn't really do anything there. Come Seleção, Manish was always one of our best players.
Oh yeah.
Bombas Manish, man.
Probably the best.
Renato Sanches is kind of like the Manish. Regardless of the form he's in club-wise, he puts on the camisola of the Seleção and he turns into a different player. Sumo85 saying, Renato, our best performer with the national team at Euro 2021. 100% he was. 100% he was. And here's the thing. Fernando Sanches in his conferência de imprensa yesterday, he made a comment saying, nós temos plano. And the players that he called tinham que encaixar no plano dele, okay? Yeah, everybody has a plan until you get punched in the fucking face, like we did at the last Euro. And we went fucking, after scoring a goal against Germany, we go down 4-1. And guess what? He brought on Renato Sanches in the game against Germany. And from that moment on, he was a staple in the team. And he picked that team up. He was a bull in the midfield. The guy was an absolute warrior for us. But it wasn't just then. I mean, Renato Sanches, healthy, has always come and shown up for the Seleção. So, to me, as much as I think Mateus Nunes is a great player, an unbelievable transitional midfielder, box to box, he does the work as good as anybody. And I think he's got a tremendous future in the Seleção. I don't know that I would have left Renato Sanches at home. I think it was a big mistake because he's the type of player that you bring on to the field and he turn the game 180 for you.
100%. A fiery player, strong on the
He's
ball.
a fiery player. He's unbelievably strong on the ball. The guy hits you through the midfield with his speed, his strength and speed alone. He cuts through the meio campo like a hot knife through butter. The guy is on a different level, man. And then he's got a great shot. So I don't know. I have a real problem with Renato Sanches being out of this squad. I really do. And I don't think, as much as, like I say, I like Mateus Nunes, I have no issues with him being there, but I do have an issue with him being there over Renato Sanches. And, that to me is a big sticking point. I think that was one of the big fails for Fernando Sanches on this convocatório, was leaving Renato Sanches out of the team.
Couldn't agree more.
All right. Moving over to os avançados. André Silva, Cristiano Ronaldo, Gonçalo Ramos, João Félix, not Feliz, Félix, whatever the fuck Tio Fernando calls him, Rafael Leão, and Ricardo Horta. My big issue here, I don't know about you, Christian, André Silva.
Yeah, 100%. Or, I mean, I like Horta too, and we've been advocating for Horta too. But even Horta, if it was between Horta and Pot, or Andre Silva and Pot, I would take Pot any day of the week.
So I'm glad you brought that up. Although, see if you can bring up the player comparisons. So I just want you guys to visualize what we're talking about here. Andre Silva, yes, he's been a pretty regular call up for the Seleção for many years, but he is just not in any sort of good form at RB Leipzig this year, and he really hasn't been. And I want you guys to see what Christian and I are talking about when we're talking about Pot and Pedro Gonçalves. So this is a side-by-side comparison of Pedro Gonçalves for Sporting and André Silva. Why this is so important, not only are the stats very, very heavily in favor of Pot. Pot is not a pure avançado. So that could be the argument that Fernando Sanches has is, maybe Pot is not, he's not a striker. He is very versatile. He could play in a false nine. He could play as a center mid. He could play on the wing. He's very versatile. But this is the type of numbers that the kid posts, playing in a variety of different roles for Sporting. And correct me if I'm wrong, he's normally on the wing for Sporting, on the right wing for Sporting, correct, Christian?
Yeah, 100%.
But he can transition into a false nine. We don't have a whole lot of wingers on this squad. We really don't. When you look at the squad, there isn't a lot of wingers outside of Ricardo Horta, João Felix, and Rafael Leão. There's really no winger, and Bernardo Silva pode fazer o papel. He can do that. He can do that winger position. But realistically, he's probably going to be playing potentially more in the midfield. Maybe he moves into the wing. We'll maybe talk about that. But I think the fact that Pot can be so versatile is huge.
Oh yeah, 100%. Something we're missing too.
And look at the numbers he's posted. We're not talking, and this is in a shitty year for Sporting. And this is the type of numbers he's posting.
Yeah, no.
I mean, I don't know how Andre Silva makes it over a guy like Pot. But to what I was saying, okay, so let's say Fernando said she's saying, you know what? No, I need that kind of staple number 9. Okay, let's pull up another comparison. Beto, playing for Udinese right now in Italy, massive guy, strong striker. He is one of the top goal scorers in the Serie A right now. 6 goals. Again, look at the stats. Andre Silva versus Beto.
Yeah, 100%.
Maybe you say, you know what? Beto doesn't start all that much. Maybe he's not quite the profile of player. Okay. How about Vitinha? Vitor Oliveira from Braga. Let's look at his. Side by side. I mean, 3 players that in my mind all day make it ahead of Andre Silva.
100%. And I've always been an advocate for Andre Silva too. I've always
no issues with Andre Silva whatsoever, man. When we're picking players in form, you cannot tell me Andre Silva wasn't called up the last convocatory that Fernando Santos had in September. He didn't call Andre Silva up. Why? Because he wasn't in form. He's not in better form. He's not in any better form than he was 2 months ago. Why does he all of a sudden deserve a call up?
Yeah, I know. It doesn't make sense to me either, honestly. At all.
That was my big issue with the avançados. Other than that, I'm fine. But to me, Andre Silva does not deserve to be on this squad. And 100% to me, the guy that should have been called ahead of Andre Silva, hands down, should have been Pedro Gonçalves from Sporting.
That's where if you have like a good tactical coach, you can utilize a guy like Pot. Like you hit the nail on the head. You can play striker, you can play winger, you can play, center mid. But as you know, with Fernando Santos, he just does his 4-3-3, his same safe formation.
But here's the thing. So he wants a number 9. I get that. But you've got Gonçalo Ramos, who to me, again, is in much better form. He's the best number 9 right now in form in all of Portugal. In all Portuguese players, he is the highest scoring Portuguese player in the world today.
Yeah.
He is your number 9. Ahead of Andre Silva, Gonçalo Ramos just coming off the bench for Ronaldo. I mean, we all know Ronaldo is going to be playing in that number 9 role, but if you need a player coming off the bench, I'm grabbing Ramos over Silva all day.
Me too.
So, I mean, he's your number 9. He's your go-to number 9. So you don't need another number 9. To me, you need somebody who could, because you could potentially bring Gonçalo Ramos and Pot on.
Oh, 100%.
Right? I just don't get the Andre Silva in his form today, especially when we have Gonçalo Ramos already there, who's scoring goals. He can do the number 9, and he does it very well to me. He's the future in that role for Portugal. I just don't get the call up for Andre Silva. So to that point, Christian, we talked about it earlier. This is the first time in Portugal's history that no Sporting player was called to the World Cup. Yeah. It's a big thing, man. It's a big deal.
It's very disappointing, and you know what? Like there's only like a few names that were staples to go, in my opinion. It was either Nuno Santos, Gonçalo Inácio, and Pot. And I mean, if you're gonna pick one of those 3, I know we just talked about him as Pot for sure. It is a slap in the face. I know we're in the league, we're not in the best form, but This is the issue that I talked about earlier. He contradicts himself all the time. He's like, okay, so is it form? So if it's form, then you wouldn't bring Pep. Oh, is it experience? Okay, then you know what I mean. He doesn't have a consistent way to do it. Like some players you won't pick because they're in bad form, and some players.
And let's be real. I don't know if you watched,
form, but they have experience. You know what I mean? Like he's inconsistent.
100%. And to be fair, man, I don't know if you watched the conference de imprensa. He doesn't answer any questions.
No.
When it comes to being asked, why did you choose this player over this player, does not answer the question. He will never give an answer as to why he picked one. So we don't really know. All he kept saying, he got probably asked 10 times with regards to why did you choose, this player over this player? And every single time it was, we have a plan and we chose the players that we feel fit in that plan. That was his answer constantly. So he doesn't really answer, to be fair. But I want to bring this up with you, Christian, because you are obviously a Sporting fan. And whenever things, in my mind, the way I think, whenever things don't make sense, or they don't make logical sense, I always have to go to, okay, why? Is there something beneath it that's causing certain things to happen or certain decisions to be made? So back in May 29th, the president of Sporting, your president, Sr. Dr. Frederico Varandas, came out and he went on an absolute rampage against, you know who, Pinto Costa, okay? Presidente do Porto. He was actually suspended 70 days by the Liga for dishonoring someone's character, and he's actually being sued by Pinto Costa for defamation. And he said a lot of things. He went on an absolute rampage in a general assembly meeting with the sócios, and he said that Pinto Costa was corruptor ativo e uma vergonha para o futebol português, among many other things. Is it a coincidence that since that time, knowing that Fernando Santos and Pinto Costa are close?
So before I give you my answer,
because we know Fernando Santos, he used to coach Porto. We know Fernando Santos and Pinto Costa are close. We've talked about it on the Seleção before. I was just looking at the dates yesterday, and I thought it was coincidental that since Frederico Varandas came out with that massive onslaught against Pinto Costa, that it has been since that date that no Sporting players have been called to the Seleção. Do you think this is a clear message from the Federação, from Fernando Santos to Sporting, and not even so much Fernando Santos, but maybe even the Federação to Sporting, that kind of leave Pinto Costa alone and have some respect for Pinto Costa? Do you think that this could be legit?
So before I give him my answer, do you think he said a lie, Varandas?
I don't think he said a lie. I just don't know whether it was necessary. Like, I don't know what Frederico Varandas, what his MO is.
Okay, that'll be
going after Pinto Costa. Like, I don't know what. Like, your team's in 6th place in the league, bro. You guys are absolutely. I mean, albeit that was before the season started. Like,
yeah.
I think you've got other priorities. I think you need to be focusing on your club versus going and taking down, a president who's, probably one of the most well-protected people in all of Portugal. I don't really know what your MO is. I don't know what Varandas thinks or hopes to accomplish by going out and just slandering and calling out Pinto Costa. Not that I agree with, Wapitoro and all of the, corruption that's kind of, surrounded his 40 years as president of Porto. But I just don't know what Varandas thinks or thought he was going to accomplish by doing this. And it could now potentially be backfiring and falling on, the Sporting players could be paying the price for, this little vendetta that Varandas has with Pinto Costa. I don't know.
I understand, agree, but at the same time, as a Portugal coach, That's not fair to the players too. You don't bring stuff that's happening with presidents into the future of these kids. But that's just my opinion. But I to answer your question without falling off track here, I do think. I mean, it's the only thing that makes sense, man. When you look at all those stats you brought up, look at all those things you brought up, especially since that day no sporting player has been called up. I totally agree. I think it's shot at Sporting. I mean, without taking my biases aside, I do think so. Especially like if he's gonna be like, oh, Sporting is in 5th or 4th or 6th. I mean, where's Wolves in the Premier League? Like they're second last. They're last.
Relegation. Yeah, I don't think you could use the excuse, especially like we showed. We showed even Pot Pedro Gonçalves in a shitty year for Sporting. He's still showing fantastic numbers. So I think again, I go back to when things just don't make sense. Is there a reason? And I think it's always important, in my opinion. I think it's important as a nation that Portugal always has representation from the 3 big clubs. I think it's always important that we have representation from our 3 big clubs at the national team. Whether they play or not, I think it's important for our football as a whole, for our league, to have representation from our 3 big clubs. So when you're looking at, you've already got Gonçalo Ramos and João Mário from Benfica, that's great. If you don't think António Silva is going to play very much, or that's kind of a dark horse pick, man, go with Gonçalo Inácio. If you don't think André Silva is really all that important, as I don't think he is because he didn't get called in the last convocatoria, and you've got someone like Pot, Pedro Gonçalves, who's a more versatile player and who can, put the ball in the back of the net, man, call him. I think it's important outside of form, outside of all those things, sometimes to also make some picks, making sure that there's representation from all 3 major clubs. I think it's important. I'm not saying to call a shit guy just to have somebody from Sporting there, but when you've got guys who can absolutely step into that role, I think it's important to have it. And the fact that he didn't do that, to me, maybe there is a little bit of controversy there with the whole Varandas thing. That's just my take on it. Christian, I know you messaged you got to step out for a bit. Do your thing, man. Are you going to come back?
Yeah, I'll be back in 2 minutes.
Okay, I'll start running through the starting 11 predictions from some of our fans and subscribers, as well as mine and Christian's. We'll start things off with Christian. You can go, man. We'll bring you back in when you're good to go. So we'll start things off with our loyal subscriber and follower, Danilo Fernandes. She's always on. Thanks, buddy, for tuning in again. Let's hit up Danilo's starting 11. So Portugal kicks off against Ghana November 24th, guys. This is Danilo's starting 11. I believe that's Diogo Costa that you've got in net there. António Silva and Ruben Dias at the back for Danilo's. Interesting. Nuno Mendes on the left, João Cancelo on the right. I like your formation here, Danilo's. Ruben Neves sitting in that trinco role, that number 6, with Mateus Nunes and Vitinha either side of him. That is a very strong midfield. Bernardo Silva playing in the classic 10, and Rafael Leão and João Felix starting up front. Danilo's, I like this. This is a very, very progressive lineup. Ronaldo off the starting 11. I would agree with that as well. I don't know about Bruno Fernandes being out of there, but that midfield is very, very strong. I like the pick. Very nice, Danilo. Thanks for sharing that, buddy. Another starting 11 we're going to share is Richie Ferreira. Put that one up here. So Richie has got Ruben Dias and António Silva as well. Wow, two guys going with António Silva, starting with Ruben Dias at the back. Nuno Mendes on the left, João Cancelo on the right, João Palhinha no meio campo over Neves. Interesting. Palhinha definitely more defensive than Neves. Good pick. Bruno Fernandes and Bernardo Silva. Oh, I like that. Rafael Leão on the left, João Felix on the right, and Ronaldo in the 9 role. That is a good starting 11 as well. I do like that. We'll jump over to mine. Adam. All right. So this is mine, guys. Diogo Costa in net. I actually did something a little bit different. Cancelo, to me, João Cancelo is not only the best right back, but he's the best left back in the world. He plays left back on a regular basis for Man City. And I think Diogo Dalot is in such good form right now for Man United as a right back that his right back form, in my mind, supersedes Nuno Mendes' left back form with PSG. So I would actually slot Cancelo over to left back, which he plays on a regular basis. And I know there's arguments on having right-footed left backs, but I personally think Cancelo does a better job or would do a better job at left back than potentially Nuno Mendes would. And I think Diogo Dalot at right back, he absolutely deserves to be in Portugal's starting 11 at right back. And then I would go with Dias and Danilo in the midfield. Again, I talked a little bit about how important it is for the experience side at center back. I think Danilo and Ruben Dias are comfortable playing with each other, and I think they should definitely continue that. Danilo plays center back with PSG almost in a weekly basis. I think he can be considered. He can almost be considered more of a center back today than a defensive midfielder. I think he's kind of done enough in that role that he's kind of really slotting more as a center back than a defensive mid. I went with Mateus Nunes and Ruben Neves in a flat midfield role. I don't think we need a Trinco in these group stage games, especially against someone like a Ghana. I don't think we need to sit back with a Trinco. I think we need to play flat. Both Neves and Mateus Nunes, none of them need to be deep lying. They can be, box to box, very transitional. And I think the game needs to flow through those two guys. And then Leão on the left, Bruno Fernandes in your classic 10, Bernardo Silva up on his right wing, and then I would slot in João Felix as kind of your false 9, playing just ahead of Bruno Fernandes. And that's kind of how I would line up against Ghana.
Oh, nice team, man. You took a little bit of a different approach this World Cup, but I mean, I do like it. I always like the 4-2-3-1.
So let's address a question here from Chubby Choto. What's with Felix on all of them? Oh boy. To me, João Felix, he's had a rough go at Athletic Madrid, but I think Athletic Madrid is falling victim to a really bad coach right now. I think Simeone, I've never been a fan of Simeone. I think his tactics are outdated and they don't suit João Felix at all. And I think in the last few games, Chubby Chota, I don't know if you've caught this. Maybe go on YouTube and watch João Felix's last couple games. I mean, when he comes off the field, he is by far and long the best player on Athletic. He'll entra con garra and he scores goals. I mean, the goals he scored the last couple games for Athletic Madrid have been big goals. He's in terms of talent, he is one of the, if not the most talented player out of this lot of 26 players. And I think, Christian, you probably agree with me on that. In terms of talent, pure raw talent, I would say both him and Rafael Leão are probably the two most talented players on this 26-man roster. So I think going into a World Cup like this, Portugal needs one of our talisman, our most talented players, João Felix. He needs to step up. He needs to show why Athletic decided to spend 120 million euros on him. It wasn't just because para encher os cofres do Benfica. Athletic Madrid paid that because they saw a very special talent there. And I think for me, Ronaldo, as amazing as he is, he's not in the form to warrant a place in the starting 11, in my opinion. He's not in the form, and I think he's going to be great. He would be much better served off the bench, but I think we need to give João Felix, we need to pass the baton to João Felix, and he needs to come out and have a big World Cup. That's just my opinion on it. On that, let's move to Christian's 11, so we kind of get his thoughts. Christian, walk us through your 11 here, buddy.
Costa, I know I brought this up a lot. He's really good with his feet. I think he's the guy. He's linked with Manchester United right now. I think I'm just going to say it. I think he's top 3 in Europe right now, top 4. There's a lot of good goalies in Europe. This is how much I believe in Diogo Costa. I think he's the guy. He's the guy at the back. So I got to pick Costa back there. Diaz, I mean, goes without saying. Pep goes without saying. So I picked.
You'd start Pep even though he hasn't played for almost 2 months.
Yes, I would. Just because, man, I go back and say it. I told you this story so many times, and I know we're in a different year. It's 2022. This was in 2016. But what I seen it from Pep and what he brings to the national team, especially in the Euro Cup final where I watched it live, this guy literally gives everything for the national team. At the end of that game, he was puking. When everybody was celebrating, he was puking. I mean, that's the kind of mentality you need to win games. Is that fieriness, that fucking leave everything on the field. I mean, how good is he going to be if he's extremely injured? Maybe not, but if he's deemed healthy to play and he can play, I'm starting Pep.
Okay.
I picked Nuno Mendes over Cancelo there on the left because, man, he's been playing really good for PSG. Even within the last couple of weeks, he scored a beautiful goal. I think his work rate's so high on that left flank. He's a pure left winger, or left back. I think he's the guy. And then Cancelo on the right. I mean, goes without saying. I think he's the best right back in the world. He's going to play. Palhinha, I brought this up many, many times. I think he frees up a lot of space for creativity for guys like Bruno and Vitinha. I think he's a lock. He's just a fucking absolute ball winner. Some people don't agree with me, but I do think Sporting's defense is so bad this year. I mean, we conceded 14 goals, and I think it's because Palhinha is not there. Because Palhinha, when he played for Sporting, this guy covered the whole field, man. He would fucking just he was the best sweeper I've seen personally on Sporting ever. Just an absolute monster. So that's why I would pick him. Vitinha, my last starting 11 a couple podcasts ago, he was not in it, but I think he's just consistently putting out good performances for PSG. He's a lock. He's a good ball moving CM. I'd like him there. Bruno is a lock. Rafael Leão. I mean, I think one of you guys shared it in our group chat. He was clocked like third fastest player in Europe or second fastest player.
Yeah.
He's just playing absolutely different level. I think on all of our teams, he's just a lock. I think he's going to give a lot of fire to our national team. He just adds that little bit of flair that I think we're missing. Ronaldo up top, just because he's our captain. I know he's out of form, but I mean, put tournament Ronaldo as a different Ronaldo. Hopefully, he can get back to form. If not, I mean, I would still start him, but I'm more the advocate of subbing him off at like the 60th, 70th minute instead of not starting him. That's just my opinion. I think he's going to play. And then Bernardo Silva. I usually like him more in the midfield, but since Vitinha is in such good form, I think I would, and Jota's hurt, I would slot him in the right wing there.
It's a good lineup. Honestly, all good lineups, guys. I think we're all kidding ourselves because I think come game day, we're going to see Pep and Ruben Dias in the midfield, João Palhinha, William, and Danilo in the midfield. Ronaldo, Leão, and probably Bernardo Silva. That'll probably be the Tio Fernando's lineup. As long as he remembers who he's got on the, that's always going to be a challenge too. All right, guys. Moving along, switching gears a little bit from the Seleção over to our Tuga topics. We're going to touch a little bit on Liga stuff here, guys. Something happened during the week. A little bit of polemica happening in the Liga with, not in the Liga, it was in the Taça Portugal game, Porto versus Mafra. Sérgio Conceição was red carded for the 21st time in his career. I don't know if you saw this, Christian, in the game against Mafra. Sérgio Conceição got very frustrated after a foul didn't go his way, his team's way, and he punted the ball. As soon as the ball came to him on the touchline, he punted the ball away, and Arbitro Elder Malheiro gave him a direct red card. And after this, Porto went on an absolute kind of offensive, basically saying that, there is a constant perseguição against Sérgio Conceição, basically that he's constantly being targeted in the Liga, and that he's consistently red carded unfairly, and that based on his reputation and what he's done for Portuguese football and for Porto, that there needs to be more respect shown for Sergio Conceição. I think Sr. Adão is bringing up here a clip of the tweet, and sorry guys, my eyes aren't good enough to read that, but basically they were listing off a whole bunch of accomplishments from Sergio Conceição and saying that, based on the man's accomplishments and what he's done for Football Club de Porto and for Portuguese soccer in general, we need to be showing more respect for Sergio Conceição, and that there is a constant kind of target on his back. As a result, Helder Malheiro actually filed a complaint against Football Club de Porto, and he filed a complaint with the Liga, basically saying, this isn't right. You can't say that I'm going out there targeting you. What's your thoughts on this, Christian? And what does this do for Porto and kind of just overall pressure on arbiters in the Liga?
I mean, we've seen this time and time again. This is where I stand. I think this is the most simplistic way to answer this. They say he's targeted, right? I don't think he's targeted. I think if this was in like the Premier League, he would not be acting a fool like he does. I think he puts on these temper tantrums because he believes that in future games they will look behind you. The fucking push. Your Benfica.
Hey man, my Benfica's falling.
Fine, man. Get that shit off the wall. Anyway.
What happened, man?
I think all jokes aside, I think they do that because they know in future games they could get more penalty shots. They can get more, they can influence the arbitros a little bit more. Because I know for a fact if that was the Premier League, if say he in the future he does coach like an Aston Villa or United or whatever, he won't be doing this because they do not accept that, and they give hefty fines, and they do not fuck around. And unfortunately, in Portugal, they give you with what $1,000 fines, $500 fines, $200 fines. What the fuck is that going to do? I think they gotta nip this stuff in the butt, or else it's just going to keep happening.
And you know what? To what we were kind of talking about earlier, this is a little bit kind of goes a little bit to what I think Frederico Varandas is trying to do is get a handle or get some controls around the level of influence and pressure that Porto puts on arbiters and on the Liga in general, man. I think there's a lot of power there that Porto wield. They've got obviously a lot of power and influence in Portugal. And I think sometimes, guys like Sergio Conceição think they're above the law in a way, and they can just kind of do whatever they want because they're backed by Pinto Costa and they're protected by Pinto Costa. I don't care what league in the world, in my opinion, any league in the world, if a ball comes to a coach and the coach rifles the ball away, I think in any league in the world, he's getting red carded. So to me, I think it's almost laughable that Porto are saying, we need more respect. This has been the 21st time your coach has been fucking red carded. Maybe it's his fucking comportament. Maybe it's his behavior. Like maybe you guys got to take him through some sort of anger management class. Like, the issue is the Liga and us not having respect for Sergio Conceição and not his comportament. Like it's 21 red cards, man. I think it might kind of be Sergio Conceição's issue, maybe not the Liga's issue or Helder Malheiro's issue.
100% agree. I mean, I think if he's going to keep doing this, you gotta have hefty fines. Like I remember that one game, I think it was last season or 2 seasons ago. They literally stopped the game halfway through, and they were fighting in the tunnel. Him and the other coach, like
Paul Sergio from Portimonense actually called him out. And you know what? I would have loved for Paul Sergio to go off against Sergio Conceição. that would have been a good one to see.
But I mean, like if you're gonna do that, you need to have hefty suspension, something that actually hurts.
It's funny. I remember when Nuno Espírito Santo first went to Wolves, and when he first went there, but when they got promoted to the Premier League, and Nuno Espírito Santo one time came out after a game a Wolves game and said that the referee didn't have, I think his exact words were that he didn't have the criteria or the criteria to be reffing in the Premier League. That's all he said in his press conference. And he got slapped with a £25,000 fine for saying that a referee didn't have the criteria to be refereeing in the Premier League. And to your point, Christian, the Prem is a great example of a league that protects its referees and that does not put up with any nonsense from coaches. And I think if the Liga took that kind of position, because like you say, you sometimes see the fines that come out, for some of the acts and some of the stuff, and it's laughable, man. It's a couple €100 or a couple €1,000, and
like
it's
2 years from now, and it's like one match.
Yeah, that's the other thing. It takes them like a year to come out with the fines and suspensions for these things.
Yeah.
Anyway, all right. I thought I'd touch on that, guys. Just a quick recap of the Liga Portugal this weekend. Obviously, today being Friday, no games today. Tomorrow, Porto taking on Boavista. It's the big Porto derby. Porto sitting in second place. Boavista currently in ninth place. It's going to be a very good game. That is taking place tomorrow. On Sunday, we've got Benfica going up against 16th place Gil Vicente, 7th place Portimonense taking on Braga. Braga's going there, and then Sporting taking on Famalicão also on Sunday. So those are the big four taking on. Those are the big four fixtures for the Liga this weekend. Obviously, the other fixtures as well. They've been going through the ticker there at the bottom, but those are the big fixtures. Do you think your Sporting will get back into form? Big win last weekend.
Huge win, but the thing is, we're inconsistent. We got to consistently keep winning. We have the right players, we have a good team, but just consistency. So one game we'll win, one game we'll lose, and we'll tie, and then we'll win, and then we'll win, and then we'll lose. We just need to build consistency.
Just like Benfica, man. You guys got to be more like Benfica. You just got to say it, man.
You know what, though? I know you're just taking shots, but it's true. Like teams that win the league, you don't have to be the best all the time. You just got to be consistent. And Sporting is definitely not consistent right now. Even Amorim is not being consistent.
But to that point,
historically, Sporting does not have a good record against Famalicão, so it should be a tough game.
But to that point, Benfica did play very poorly against Estoril this week in the Taça de Portugal. It was actually we were talking about António Silva, one of the worst games I've seen António Silva play for Benfica, and we got very lucky. Neres came on and scored a goal, a beautiful goal, but it was not a good game. Even Rogério was not happy with
Jonathan, that. Been some knowledge there.
Hey, buddy, consistency. Benfica, winless, or what is it, 20, what are we at, 26, 27 games now, winning streak? I think actually including friendlies, Rogério hasn't lost a game, I think, in 29 or 30 games, if I'm not mistaken, including friendlies. So pretty fantastic. Anyway, guys, we're just approaching the hour mark. Lots that we went through today with the Seleção, with the convocados from Fernando Santos. We're going to be coming to you guys next week again. Portugal taking on Nigeria on the 17th. That's the one friendly that we have prior to the kickoff against Ghana. It'll be a good test before our game against Ghana. And next week, we're going to be going through the entire World Cup bracket. Christian and I are going to be doing picks and predictions for the entire World Cup bracket. That's going to be fun to do. And we'll really take a deep dive. We'll look at how Portugal lined up against Nigeria. And then we'll really do a deep dive into the opener against Ghana, and all of the World Cup predictions and bracket predictions will be done next week. So, guys, once again, thank you for tuning in. Christian, buddy, you're a warrior coming out. I know you're not feeling good, man.
That's not fun, man.
But you always show this Seleção. I love it, buddy.
100%.
Okay, buddy. Guys, take care. Have a good weekend. Ciao.
See you guys.